They said Jin Seojun was already dead. Not officially. Not on paper. But the 17 men standing outside the operating room on the 4th floor of Seoul's most expensive private hospital, men with tattoos crawling up their necks and earpieces that connected to nobody they'd ever name, they knew. You don't bleed that much and come back. You don't take 2 bullets to the chest, one grazing the left ventricle, and wake up asking for coffee. 30 doctors. That is not an exaggeration. 30 of the finest cardiac and trauma specialists that money, enormous, terrifying amounts of money, could summon in under 4 hours. Flown in from Busan, from Tokyo, from one man still in his dinner jacket from a fundraiser in Hong Kong. 30 doctors who between them had saved presidents, CEOs, and at least one member of a royal family nobody was supposed to know had a drug problem, and Jin Seojun was dying anyway. The head surgeon, a thin man named Dr. Yoon who had not slept in 22 hours, walked out of the theater, pulled off his gloves, and said 4 words to the man standing closest to the door. Whoever comes next. That man's name was Park Di-ho. He had been Jin's second-in-command for 11 years. He had watched Jin negotiate a shipment deal with a Taiwanese syndicate while eating sunjubu jjigae like he was discussing the weather. He had seen Jin stare down a Russian arms dealer without blinking for 45 seconds straight until the Russian looked away first. Park Di-ho was not a man who panicked. He panicked. He stepped away from the door, pressed his back against the hospital corridor wall, and pulled out his phone. He went through his contacts. He called a man in Incheon who knew a faith healer. The man in Incheon said the faith healer had moved to Jeju. He called a doctor in Germany who had worked on experimental blood coagulation procedures. The doctor in Germany said what he was describing was beyond what anyone could do right now, that the cardiac tissue damage alone. Park Di-ho hung up. He stood in that corridor for a long moment, the fluorescent lights making everyone look like they were already in a morgue, and he thought about a name. A name that had come to him 2 years ago through a contact in Lagos, passed along like a rumor, like something you weren't supposed to repeat too loud. A nurse. Not a doctor. A nurse. That detail alone had made him almost dismiss it. But the contact had been specific. Had said. There was a man in Abuja who had been declared dead 3 separate times. She brought him back twice. The 3rd time, she told the family he was ready to go, and she was right about that too. Asterisk, the contact had said her name was Sadia. She was not supposed to be in Seoul. Sadia Adekanal had taken a 6-month locum posting at a small international clinic in Itaewon mostly because she needed distance. Distance from Lagos, from the hospital where she'd spent 4 years being the most competent person in any room she entered and getting none of the credit for it. Distance from her mother's voice asking when she was coming home and why she was still unmarried, and didn't she know her cousin Bissy just had twins? She had landed in Seoul in February with 2 suitcases, a box of chin-chin her aunt had forced on her at the airport, and the particular exhaustion of someone who has been strong for too long. By April, she had quietly become essential to the clinic. By May, 2 other hospitals had tried to poach her. She had a reputation, not the loud, documented kind, but the kind that travels mouth to ear, the way important things always do. Doctors who worked with her described it the same way, though none of them could fully explain it. They said she saw things, not metaphysically, clinically. She would walk into a room, look at a patient, and catch something that everyone else had catalogued and dismissed, a barely there symptom, a wrong number buried in a chart, a medication interaction that shouldn't have been missed but was. She was off duty when Park Di-ho's call came through. She was in her apartment in Itaewon, eating jollof rice she had made from scratch because the homesickness had gotten bad that week, watching a Nigerian drama on her laptop with her feet tucked under her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick up. She picked up. The man on the other end spoke in urgent, clipped English with a Korean accent so thick she had to concentrate. He told her there was a man dying. He told her 30 doctors had failed. He told her he had her name from a source he couldn't disclose. He told her there would be a car outside her building in 7 minutes. Sadia set down her fork. "How did you get this number?" she asked. "Please," Park Di-ho said, just that. And something in that single word, from a man who very clearly never said it, made her stand up. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "Before we go on, drop your country and your state in the comments right now. Wherever you're watching from, whether it's Lagos or London, Accra or Atlanta, Seoul or Saskatchewan, Say it out loud in those comments. You are seen. You are not just a view count. You are loved. The car was a black Genesis with tinted windows and a driver who did not speak the entire journey. Sadia sat in the back with her nursing bag on her lap, and the very reasonable thought that this could be the last decision she ever made. She was a black woman in a foreign country, getting into an unmarked car at 11 p.m. because a stranger on the phone said *, please. * she had spent her whole career walking into rooms where the situation was already catastrophic and being the calmest person there. She decided to extend that same discipline to herself right now. She thought about what she knew. A man, critically injured, cardiac involvement, 30 specialists who had not been able to stabilize him. She ran through the differentials in her head the way she always did, not panicking, just building the picture before she had enough pieces. The hospital was not what she expected. No public signage. Unmarked building in a part of Gangnam that looked like corporate offices from the outside. Inside, the equipment was extraordinary. She clocked that immediately. This was not a hospital that worried about budget. Park Di-ho met her at the elevator. He was a broad-shouldered man with the kind of face that had stopped being readable to outsiders a long time ago. He looked at her, and she was used to being looked at in that particular way, the quick recalibration behind someone's eyes when she walked into a space she wasn't expected in, and then he looked at her nursing bag. "The help," he said, not unkindly, just surprised. "I'm the help," Sadia said, without missing a beat. "Take me to him." The operating theater smelled like blood and antiseptic, and the specific anxiety of too many qualified people who had run out of answers. Dr. Yoon was still there. Sitting in a chair in the corner with his arms folded, looking like a man whose pride was having a very bad night. He stood when Sadia walked in. "Who is this?" he said, in Korean first, then English. "Who might see something we didn't," Park Di-ho said. Dr. Yoon looked like he wanted to say several things. He chose not to say any of them. Sadia didn't look at either of them. She walked to the bed. Jin Seo-jun was even in this state, even pale and intubated and hooked to more machines than she had ever seen on one patient, a striking man. Tall, broad, with a stillness that felt deliberate, even unconscious, like his body had been trained not to give anything away. The tattoos started at his collarbone and disappeared under the hospital gown. His face was younger than she'd expected. Mid-30s maybe. She picked up his chart. Started reading. Nobody spoke. She read for 4 minutes. Then she set the chart down, walked around to the left side of the bed and looked at the cardiac monitor. She looked at the IV lines. She leaned down closer than any of the 30 specialists apparently had, and she looked at the entry point of the central line in his neck. She stood up straight. "Who placed this central line?" she said. Dr. Yoon stepped forward. "I did, 3 hours ago." "It's positional," Sadia said. "When he's lying flat, the tip is partially occluding." Every time his pressure dropped, it wasn't just the cardiac damage. You were restricting your own drug delivery. The vasopressors weren't getting through consistently. Silence. The kind of silence that is very loud. "That's," Dr. Yoon started. "Reposition the line. Adjust the angle by about 15 degrees. Then we restart the vasopressor at the modified dose I'm going to write down for you, and we give the cardiac tissue a chance to respond to treatment it's actually been receiving." Nobody moved for 3 full seconds. Park Di-ho looked at Dr. Yoon. Dr. Yoon, to his credit, looked at the line, looked at the monitor, looked at his own hands. "Get me the repositioning kit," he said quietly. It took 40 minutes. Sadia stood back and directed calmly, in a voice that did not rise or waver. She had done this before, not this exactly, but this kind asterisk of thing, being the person who sees clearly in a room full of people too close to the problem. She had learned early that expertise and proximity are not the same thing. Sometimes you need the person who just walked in. At the 38-minute mark, Jin Seo-jun's blood pressure stabilized. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. It just held. The number on the monitor stopped its terrifying downward drift and held, the way a climber's foot finds a ledge. Dr. Yoon exhaled so sharply it was almost a sound. Park Di-ho, who had been standing by the door with his arms crossed and his jaw set, closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Sadia wrote the updated medication protocol on the chart, handed it to the nearest nurse, and walked out of the theater. She was in the corridor, her back against the wall, letting herself breathe for the first time in an hour when Park Di-ho came out after her. "Whatever you need," he said. "Name it. Money, arrangements, anything." Sadia looked at him. "I want to be notified when he wakes up," she said. And I want a full patient handover so I can make sure the recovery protocol is correct. Park Di-ho stared at her. That's it. That's it for now, Sadia said. She didn't tell him the other reason she wanted to be there. When Jin Seo-jun woke up, she had seen something else in that chart, something that had nothing to do with the central line. A detail so specific, so buried, so impossible that her hands had been completely steady only because she had forced them to be. The blood type notation in the original intake form. The secondary marker that the doctors had overlooked because it wasn't relevant to the trauma they were treating. Sadia had seen that marker once before in her life. In one other patient. In Lagos. 7 years ago. A patient whose file she had never been able to forget, because he had died before she could ask him who he was, and because the man who had come to claim that body had looked at 19-year-old nursing student Sadia Adekanal and said, in English with a Korean accent, "You didn't see anything." She needed to know if she was right. She needed Jin Seo-jun to wake up. His name, in full, was Jin Soo-hyun, and in certain parts of Seoul, the parts that didn't show up in travel guides, the parts where debts were settled without paperwork and disappearances were logged as relocations. That name was not spoken above a whisper. Not because people didn't know it, because knowing it too loudly had a way of making you someone Jin needed to have a conversation with. And his conversations, depending on which side of the table you sat on, could go very differently. He ran the Soo-hyun syndicate from the 43rd floor of a glass building in Mapogu that was officially registered as a logistics consultancy. On paper, they moved freight. In reality, they moved everything the city's legal economy refused to touch: territory, leverage, silence. Entire neighborhoods operated under agreements that Jin's organization had brokered. Police precincts looked away on schedules that had been negotiated years before the current officers were even assigned. Judges retired early. Prosecutors found reasons to be reasonable. It had taken Jin 11 years to build something this invisible, and the invisibility was the point. The moment your operation became a story people told, you had already lost control of it. He had inherited nothing. He had built everything from a single debt collected in Busan when he was 22, a favor done for the right man at the right time with the right amount of violence applied in exactly the right place. From that one moment, he had constructed an empire with the patience of someone who understood that real power didn't announce itself. None of this was what Amanda saw. Amanda saw a quiet man with careful eyes who listened better than anyone she had ever met, and never once made her feel like an object in a room full of men who collected women the way they collected watches. That was the most dangerous part. Thursday came. He was not late. She wore red that night, not for him, she told herself, which was exactly the kind of lie she was getting comfortable telling. He was already at table 9 when she arrived, and he looked up from his phone and put it face down on the table the moment he saw her. A small thing, the kind of small thing that accumulates. "You wore red," he said. "Wear red sometimes. You didn't the other weeks." She sat across from him and raised an eyebrow. "You're paying attention to my wardrobe now." "I pay attention to everything," he said simply. Not a boast. A statement of fact, offered the same way you'd tell someone the weather. The night moved the way their Thursday nights had started to move, easy, layered, conversation pulling them both somewhere neither of them was fully nomming yet. She told him about a fight she'd had with her sister over the phone that week, how her sister wanted to drop out of university and Amanda had spent 40 minutes arguing her out of it. Jin listened without interrupting, and when she was done he said, "You parent her." "Someone has to. You resent it sometimes." It wasn't a question. Amanda looked at him. "That's a bold thing to say." "You can tell me I'm wrong." She looked away. "You're not wrong." A pause. "I love her more than anything. I also wish sometimes that I could just be her sister and not her everything else." She stopped, shook her head slightly. "I don't know why I keep telling you things. Because I don't repeat them," Jin said. She looked back at him. Something in the way he said it, the quiet certainty of it, made her chest do something she didn't entirely approve of. "Jin." She said his name deliberately, testing the weight of it. "What are you actually doing here, every Thursday?" "What is this for you?" He was quiet for a moment. The music pulsed around them. Across the club, a group of men were laughing too loudly at something, and the sound felt very far away. "The same thing it is for you," he said finally. "And what's that?" "Something real," he said. "In a week full of things that aren't." Amanda held his gaze. She felt the ground shift slightly beneath her, not dramatically, not like an earthquake, more like the slow tilt of a boat on open water. Subtle, irreversible. "I don't date clients," she said. "I know. I'm serious. I know that too, so don't." "Amanda." He said her name once quietly and it stopped her. "I'm not asking you for anything tonight," she exhaled, nodded, picked up her glass, but something had been said without being said and they both knew it and neither of them pretended otherwise for the rest of the evening. He asked her to dinner 3 weeks later, not at the club. A restaurant in Idiwan's small, tucked behind a door with no sign, the kind of place that existed entirely on reputation and the private knowledge of people who moved in circles Amanda had never moved in. She almost said no. She practiced saying no in her bathroom mirror the morning of. She said yes anyway. The dinner was the best evening she had had in 4 years in this city. Not because of the food, though the food was extraordinary. Because Jin, outside of the club, was somehow even more himself. He laughed twice, real laughs, brief and genuine, prompted both times by things she said. He ordered for them in Korean and then translated every item for her without being asked. And when she stumbled through pronouncing one of the dishes, he didn't correct her, just smiled and let her have it. They talked about music. She loved Afrobeats. He had been quietly listening to a playlist of it for the past month, he admitted, and she burst out laughing and said that was the most unexpected thing she had ever heard, and he said he liked unexpected things, and she thought about that sentence for the rest of the night. Walking back to her car afterward, he reached out and touched her hand. Just that. One brief point of contact, his fingers closing lightly over hers for a moment before releasing. Like a question she didn't pull away. "Dinner again?" he asked. "Maybe," she said. "Me," she said, and got in the car. She was smiling before she turned the key. What she didn't see, what she couldn't have seen from where she sat in the warmth of that evening, was the black SUV parked half a block behind her car. 2 men inside, engine off, watching. They weren't watching Amanda, they were watching Jin. And when Jin's car pulled away from the curb, the SUV followed at a careful distance, its headlights off for the first 3 blocks, the way a vehicle moves when the people inside it know exactly what they're doing and don't need light to do it. The calls started that weekend. Jin, checking in. Not obsessively, he wasn't that kind of man. Once in the evening, sometimes not until late, always brief unless she kept the conversation going, which she found herself doing more often than not. Her sister called during one of those late conversations, and Amanda felt the guilt of choosing which call to take, and then felt irritated at herself for feeling guilty. And then felt more irritated at Jin for making her feel anything at all. She told her friend Bissy about him. Bissy was Ghanaian, worked at a nail salon 2 streets from Amanda's apartment, and had a radar for disaster that Amanda trusted more than her own. Bissy's response was immediate. "Korean man, rich, private, doesn't talk about his work." She listed it like a checklist. "Amanda, baby, no. You don't know him. I know that type. Don't. Does he have regular hours? Does he have work friends you've met? Does he ever take a normal phone call in front of you, or does he always step away?" Amanda said nothing. Bissy pointed at her. "That silence is not good. He's just private. Private is when you don't post your location on social media. What you're describing is classified." Bissy leaned forward. "Ask him something direct, something he can't dance around. Look at his face when he answers. Then come back and tell me what you saw." Amanda went home and told herself Bissy was being dramatic. But the next time she saw Jin, she watched his face more carefully. And what she saw was a man who had mastered the art of being present and absent at the same time. Fully there with her, genuinely, she believed that, and completely sealed off behind something she couldn't name or reach. She should have listened to Bissy. Instead, one evening in November, when the city had gone gray and cold and Jin had come to her apartment for the first time, she'd cooked jollof rice and he'd eaten 2 full plates and looked at her like she'd done something miraculous. She asked him directly, "Tell me something true about your life, something you don't tell people." He set his fork down, looked at the table for a moment, then at her. "I have done things," he said slowly, "that I cannot undo. Things I made a choice to do and would make the same choice again because of what they protected." A pause. "I am not a good man in the way that word is usually meant." Amanda felt the words land in her chest. She said, because there was a but coming, she could feel it. "But I have not lied to you," he said. "Not once, about anything you've asked me. You've avoided things. Yes, that's different from lying." She studied him for a long time. The kitchen was warm. The food between them was getting cold. Outside, Seoul moved in its relentless, indifferent way. "What are you protecting?" she asked quietly. He looked at her. And for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something move behind those careful eyes, something that wasn't control or calculation, something older and heavier. "Right now," he said. "You!" Amanda's breath caught, and then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Something in his face changed so fast she almost missed it. A tightening, a reset. The man she'd just been sitting with was still there, but something else had come forward, something colder, like a door sliding shut in slow motion. "I have to take this," he said. He stood, walked to the window, his back to her. She heard his voice drop to something low and flat and completely different from the voice he used with her. Korean, rapid, clipped. She caught one word she recognized, jijium, meaning now, and the way he said it made the hair on her arms rise. He hung up. Stood at the window for a moment, then turned back to her with that face, composed, controlled, unreadable again. "Have to go," he said. "Jin, I'm sorry." He said it gently, genuinely, but he was already moving, jacket, keys, the transformation so smooth and complete it was almost frightening. He stopped at the door, looked back at her. "Lock this behind me," he said. "Both locks." Amanda blinked. "What?" But he was already gone. She stood in her kitchen with jollof rice going cold on the table and the sound of his footsteps fatting down the stairwell, and some instinct she had ignored for weeks suddenly screamed at her from the base of her spine, the kind of instinct that didn't use words, just sensation. Pure, animal, wrong. She walked to the window, looked down at the street below. Jin stepped out of her building and walked to his car without hurrying. But before he reached it, two men appeared from the shadows of the building across the street. They fell into step beside him, not threatening, not aggressive. The opposite. Like soldiers flanking a general, a third man opened the car door. Jin didn't look up at her window. Didn't look back at all. The car pulled away into the Seoul night, and Amanda stood at the glass with her hand flat against it and something cold settling in her stomach. She thought about what Bissy had said. She thought about what Jin had said, "I am not a good man," in the way that word is usually meant. She thought about the word now spoken in a voice she had never heard from him before. And then her own phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She crossed the room and picked it up. Unknown number. Same format as the very first message he'd ever sent her. But this wasn't Jin. The message read, "You don't know who you're sitting across from. Walk away while it's still your choice." Amanda stared at the screen. Her hands were completely still, but inside her chest, something had already started to crack. Amanda did not sleep that night. She sat on her couch with the phone face up on the cushion beside her, the unknown number staring back at her like an open wound, and she ran every conversation she'd ever had with Jin through her mind, like footage she was reviewing for evidence. Every deflection, every careful non-answer, every time he'd stepped away to take a call, every time she'd noticed something pass behind his eyes that she'd chosen to file under complicated past instead of what it actually was. She had been so careful her whole life. That was the thing eating at her. She had grown up watching her mother trust the wrong man and pay for it in years of quiet suffering, and she had promised herself, sworn to herself, that she would never be that woman, the one who sees the signs and decorates them. And here she was. By 3 a.m. she had typed and deleted 4 different messages to Jin. By 4 a.m. she had decided to say nothing and wait. By 5 a.m. she was researching his name on her phone, Jin's Soo-hyun, Seoul, logistics, and finding exactly what a man who didn't want to be found would leave behind. A company registration, a building address, a single photograph from a charity gala 3 years ago in which he stood at the edge of the frame, slightly turned, like he'd known the camera was there, and positioned himself accordingly. Nothing else. For a man of apparent wealth in the age of the internet, that absence was its own kind of answer. She put the phone down, watched the Seoul dawn come up gray and slow through her window. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She went to see him. She had the building address from the company registration. 43rd floor, Mapogu. She dressed simply, dark jeans, a coat, her natural hair pulled back. She was not going as the woman from Club Noir. She was going as herself, which felt simultaneously like armor and exposure. The lobby was marble and glass and staffed by 2 men in suits who were built in a way that suggested their job description extended well beyond greeting visitors. She gave Jin's name, said she was a personal contact. One of the men made a call without taking his eyes off her. A brief conversation. A pause that lasted long enough to make her consider leaving. Then, 43rd floor, someone will meet you. Elevator opened to a corridor that was plain in the way that expensive things sometimes are: no decoration, no excess, just quality in every surface. A woman met her. Young, Korean, precise. Led her to a room that was not Jin's office but a kind of waiting area, leather chairs, a low table, a view of the Han River that made the city look peaceful from up here in a way it absolutely was not. Jin appeared 4 minutes later. He stopped when he saw her. A full stop, not dramatic, just complete. Then something moved through his expression that she hadn't seen before. Not alarm, something closer to the look of a man who has spent years keeping two worlds apart, watching them touch for the first time. "Amanda," he said, "don't." She kept her voice level. "Don't say my name like that yet, not until we talk." He nodded once, glanced at the woman who had led Amanda up, who disappeared without a word. He came further into the room, did not sit. She remained standing too. She held up her phone, the message on screen. He looked at it. His jaw tightened slightly. "Who sent this?" she asked. "Someone who wants to make a point." "What point?" "That they know you exist." He said it quietly. "Which means I've been careless, which is not something I'm accustomed to being." Amanda absorbed that. "Careless how?" "Being seen with you, publicly, more than once." He looked at her directly. "I didn't think anyone was paying that kind of attention." "Someone was." She sat down, not because she was calm, because her legs needed a moment. She pressed her hands flat on her thighs and breathed and looked at the Han River through the glass and then back at him. "Tell me what you are," she said. "All of it, not the version you've been giving me, all of it." Jin was quiet for a long time, long enough that she thought he might refuse. Then he sat across from her, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and told her. Not everything. She understood later that what he gave her was a controlled portion of the truth, shaped to be honest without being complete. But it was enough. The syndicate, the territory, the nature of the business that had made him what he was. He spoke without flinching, without apology, without any of the theatrical self-loathing that men sometimes performed when confessing darkness in hopes of being absolved by the right woman. He just told her. Cleanly. Like she had asked for a fact and he was providing it. When he finished, the room was very quiet. "Man who sent that message," Amanda said. "Who is he?" "His name is Kang. He runs operations in 3 districts that border mine. We have an arrangement, a boundary agreement." A pause. "He's been looking for leverage against me for 2 years. I'm the leverage." Jin didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. "So I'm in danger," Amanda said. Not a question, not hysteria. Just the word placed carefully on the table between them. Potentially. "Yes." He said it like it cost him something. Amanda stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the river. She thought about her sister, about her mother's restaurant in Lagos, about the scholarship that had brought her to this city and the series of choices that had led her to a club and a table 9 and a man with a silver ring and careful eyes who had somehow, despite everything she knew about survival, gotten all the way inside. "I should leave," she said. "Walk away, that's the smart thing." Jin said. "It is." She turned from the window, looked at him. "Is that what you want?" she asked. "For me to walk away," something crossed his face. "Brief, real. What I want," he said carefully, "has never been the point of my life." Amanda looked at him for a long moment. This man who had built an empire on control and invisibility and was sitting in front of her looking, for the first time since she'd known him, like something he couldn't manage. "I need 3 days," she said. "Don't contact me. Don't send anyone. Just give me 3 days to think." He nodded. "Okay." "Jin," she held his gaze. "If anything happens to me because of this, because of you, there is no version of this story where I forgive that. Nothing will happen to you," he said. The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it told her exactly how far he was willing to go to make that true. And that willingness was almost more frightening than Kang's message. She left. He didn't follow. The 3 days were the longest of her life. She called Bissy on the first day and told her almost everything. Bissy went silent in a way that was so unlike her it was alarming. Then she said, "Amanda, listen to me. Pack a bag. Come stay with me." Amanda said she was fine. Bissy said, "You're not fine. You're brave, which is worse." Amanda almost laughed. Almost. On the second day she called her sister in Lagos. Didn't tell her anything real. Just talked. Listened to her sister complain about a professor and a group assignment and a boy in her class, and Amanda sat on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and closed her eyes and let the ordinary sound of her sister's life wash over her like water. On the 3rd day she made her decision. She called Jin. "I'm not walking away," she said when he picked up. A pause. "Amanda." "Not finished. I'm not walking away, but things change. If I'm going to be in your life in any real way, then I'm not a secret anymore. No more protecting me by hiding me. If Kang already knows I exist, then the hiding already failed. So we do this differently." Jin was quiet on the other end. You think visibility protects you, he said finally. I think invisibility already failed, she said. And I think you know that too. Another pause, longer this time. Asking me to change how I operate, he said. Masking you to trust me with my own safety. Something shifted in the silence between them. She could feel it even through the phone. "'Kay," he said quietly. "'Kay, yes," she exhaled slowly. "Dinner tonight, somewhere public, and you don't step away for a single phone call." "'Kay," he said again. And something in his voice, something small and unmistakable, sounded like relief. They had dinner in Hanamdong. A proper restaurant, full room, no private booths. Jin wore no security detail that she could see, though she suspected they were somewhere nearby in the way that his people always were present and invisible at once. He kept his phone in his jacket all evening. When it buzzed twice, she saw him feel it and leave it alone, and she understood what that cost him. It was the best dinner they had ever shared. Walking back to her car after, he took her hand. Not briefly this time. Fully. His fingers interlaced with hers, and they walked a full block in the Seoul night like two ordinary people, and she thought dangerously, stupidly, honestly, that this was something she wanted to keep. "Kang," she said as they reached her car. "What happens with him?" "I'll handle it," Jin said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." She turned to face him. In the streetlight, his face was softer than she'd ever seen it. The stillness was there, but underneath it something else, something exposed and unguarded in a way she didn't think he let himself be with anyone. "Not afraid of your world," she said. "I just need you to stop treating me like I am." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he lifted his free hand and touched her face, just once, the back of his fingers against her cheek, gentle in a way that seemed to surprise even him. "You should be afraid," he said quietly. "But I'm glad you're not." She leaned into it slightly, just slightly. An answer without words. She drove home alone. The city lights blurred past her windows. She was smiling, which felt reckless, which felt real, which felt worth it. She didn't notice the car that had been parked outside the restaurant when they arrived was now gone. She didn't notice that the same car was now 3 vehicles behind her on the expressway, matching her speed, making no move to close the distance. She didn't notice it until she pulled into her street and the car pulled in behind her and kept its headlights on, trained directly on her vehicle, and did not stop. Amanda's hand froze on the door handle. Her phone was in her bag on the passenger seat. The car behind her idled. Nobody got out. She reached slowly for her bag, pulled out her phone. Jin's name was already at the top of her recent calls. She pressed it. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, but it wasn't Jin. It was a man she had never heard before, speaking in Korean, low and almost amused, and the one word she understood, the one word she had learned in 2 years in this city, was her own name. Amanda. And then the car behind her cut its lights. And in the sudden dark, the street was completely, impossibly silent. What happens next? Does Amanda make it out? And what has Jin just walked into? Drop your country and city below. And if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, you already know what to do.